Hey guys, welcome back. So this week we're going to be doing something a little bit different since it's a short week for me, but I still wanted to get something out for all of you cool people on YouTube to watch. So what we're going to be doing is reviewing and ranking every single Ren Stimpy game ever released. I know, hold your excitement in, but it's something I've been wanting to do for a while, and this is probably the best week to do it. Alright, hold on just a second while I bring down the ranking chart thing. There we go. Now I've tried to keep this as simple as possible with just 5 rankings because, I don't think Ren and Stimpy games need much more. At the top is the highest ranking that any Ren and Stimpy game can reasonably achieve, which is actually kind of fun. Below that we've got pretty okay, and next is not great, but at least playable. Second to lowest is absolute trash. And finally at the bottom of the barrel we've got so bad that it makes me sick. So let's just get this thing going because we got a bunch of games to get through, and none of these are going to be like full-length reviews or anything because we'd be here all day, but just enough so that you get the idea. And this only covers actual console releases, so no browser games or crossover games or anything like that. And with that out of the way, let's get the show going with, oh god, Buckaroos for the NES and Super NES. Believe it or not, Buckaroos is the only Ren and Stimpy game on the NES, and with how bad it is, maybe kids should have considered themselves lucky. The whole thing is about Stimpy inventing a game console that gives them both money for every game that they beat. So each level is essentially you trying to grab as much money as you can by the end of the level. But you really don't have to, it doesn't matter. Each one of the games is based on a different Ren and Stimpy episode, starting off with Space Madness, where you have to get Ren to the other side of the room by using items to get him past obstacles. If you've ever played something like Rocko's Modern Life on the Super Nintendo, it's kinda like that. And at first I was almost impressed since the game was actually attempting to do something different. There's even a shooter section in the same stage where you're piloting their ship until you take down enough space junk before you can continue your quest to move Ren a few feet to the right. And it is bad, but at least it's different, right? But after that level, the game turns into your standard god-awful Ren and Stimpy platformer, and this is where you see just how bad this game controls. It feels awful, and get ready for this to be a running theme through a lot of these games. Ren has his basic slap that can barely reach anything, but some stages let you switch to Stimpy, and at least you get to hork up hairballs at enemies with him, though he somehow feels even worse to play as than Ren does. You can grab some weapons here and there like boomerang socks or a bow and arrow, but besides that it's mostly just you fighting with the controls while getting past some truly awful stages. This section in the third stage where you're jumping your way up these buildings while getting pelted with just all sorts of crap is close to a crime against humanity. And even worse, the game starts repeating those stages just a few levels in, getting even more annoying each time they show up. So if you didn't like something about these stages the first time through, well don't worry because the game's gonna make you do it all several more times just in case you kept some of your sanity the first time. There's just nothing here that's worth your time unless you just want to torture yourself with some of the worst platforming that you can find in a video game. You don't even get any of that trademark Ren and Stimpy humor that you can usually at least count on in these games, or they just look so bad that you can't even tell it's supposed to be a cameo character. Honestly, the whole thing just looks and feels like a hacked ROM that some dude pasted Ren and Stimpy sprites into. But there is a Super Nintendo version as well, which actually ended up being the last Ren and Stimpy game on that system. So is it any better? It's still bad, but maybe not as bad? It's the same basic idea, but the levels have kind of been switched around and expanded on a lot. In this game, you actually start out in the Robin Hoek levels, with way more ammo to pick up for your bow, including melons and chickens. And speaking of chickens, the Western stage now has you running through it on top of a chicken for whatever reason. And the Space Madness stages are way more involved this time as far as all the stuff that you need to make Ren avoid. But it was already annoying enough on the NES, adding more isn't what this game needed. It at least looks a lot better of course, and it does feel a little bit better to play, but it's still pretty bad. It's like saying one train wreck is more appealing than another train wreck, but at least the humor's a little bit more apparent here, with cameo characters actually looking like their cartoon selves instead of this. So I guess there's at least a little bit more effort here, but it doesn't really count for too much. So how are we going to rank these two? Well, the NES game is just unforgivably bad, and that Robin Hoek level legit made me throw my controller. So we're going to put this down at the bottom where it belongs. The Super Nintendo version is at least a little less offensive, but it sure feels like a cheap cash-in as the last Ren and Stimpy game on that console. So I think it's going to chill over here as cheap trash. And man, this is not a good look so far. Up next is one that we've already covered on this channel before, so if you want the full review, go check out the Games So Bad That They Felt Like Scams video. And that right there should tell you about all you need to know about Fire Dogs. This was one of those weirdo games that was only available at video stores, so you could only play Fire Dogs if you happened to see it for rent somewhere. And this wasn't unheard of back then. It happened occasionally with stuff like Final Fight Guy and even Eek the Cat, but most of the time these were tossed out to video stores because either the publisher had an exclusivity deal with them or just had zero confidence that it would be worth the money to do a full distribution of it.
It's the mature thing to do.
Fire Dogs here was technically a Blockbuster exclusive, but I remember seeing this one at my local video store, and that definitely wasn't a Blockbuster, so it must have floated around a little bit. And if you were thinking that being a rental-only release meant that the quality would be even lower than the usual Ren and Stimpy fare, well, you'd be right. Fire Dogs feels like it would barely qualify as 2 full levels in any of the other Ren and Stimpy games. You basically play as Stimpy as you run around a firehouse collecting items that you need to return to the fire truck before the stage can end. And of course, standing in your way is a fireman that's constantly hunting you down and is basically the Ren and Stimpy version of Nemesis from Resident Evil. Along with an incredibly unforgiving time limit, making you memorize where everything is, and then trying to do an absolutely perfect run before the time limit makes you do it all over again. If you can manage to do all of that and you haven't asked your parents if you can return the game to Blockbuster, then you and Ren are sent out to the streets to catch stuff that's being dropped out of buildings. It's a very simple stage where all you're doing is just running back and forth so all the garbage being tossed down doesn't hit the street. But once you're done with that, then the whole process repeats itself and you go right back to doing the Firehouse Collect-a-thon again, just even more maddening with each new time you do it. And maybe if the game was just a little bit more fun, then I wouldn't have such a big problem with it, since this is literally made for a 3-day rental. But the Stimpy stages are so annoying to play and memorize that no kid would want to play this for more than a few minutes. So going by all that, I think this one drops squarely into the not great but at least playable category, and I think I could live with that. It still sucks if any of you happen to waste a rental on this one back in the day though. Hey, check it out. I think this is actually like the first Game Gear game that we've ever looked at on this channel. But unfortunately, it's Quest for the Shaven Yak. And I mean, maybe I shouldn't say unfortunately, it's not bad for a Game Gear game at all. You get to pick from Ren and Stimpy before each level, and for once they actually have some stuff that makes them different from each other. Ren can do a high jump along with being able to walk over certain platforms that Stimpy can't. Stimpy, on the other hand, can do a ground pound to bash through stuff, but he's a bit heavier than Ren, so he'll break through rickety platforms. As for attacks, Stimpy has his hairballs and Ren throws toothbrushes for whatever reason. You can also find special weapons here and there, but I mean overall this is a very basic handheld game. But it's all totally serviceable. For a portable game, this would have actually been really impressive back in the day, and it's even got a decent amount of content in it for once, instead of the 15-minute long games you'd get on the Game Boy. I guess my biggest problem is just how generic it kind of feels. There's not much of anything in here that even feels like a Ren and Stimpy game besides Ren and Stimpy. And maybe it's because every other game on this list is just constantly bashing you over the head with attempted Ren and Stimpy humor that it makes this game feel almost serene in comparison. And the whole idea of them marching through the wilderness for the Shaven Yak really doesn't help either, since the entire game is just kind of generic wilderness and mountain areas. Even the animals for the most part could have come from any other game. It's just kind of plain, I guess. Still though, considering what kids were getting on the Game Boy, I think this more than earns its spot in the pretty okay category. But we're not done with Shaven Yaks yet, because there was actually a Master System version of the game as well. And this is one of those games that was only released in Brazil, because if you didn't know, the Master System was like the hottest console ever down there. But unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that was released just for Brazil wasn't very good, or just kind of a half-assed port. And Quest for the Shaven Yak mostly fits into the latter category. This is literally just the Game Gear version. They didn't even bother to resize the character select and title screens. And I'd actually be okay with that, but it's just not as good of an experience on console as it was on the handheld. That emptiness from the Game Gear version is amplified even further here, since you do get more screen real estate to work with once you're actually playing it. But it also plays slower than the Game Gear version for whatever reason. It's like it's just a touch less responsive, and it makes the game feel a little worse, especially if you've played the Game Gear version. It's still playable, but it's like a less good version of that game. And I think that's going to earn it a spot just below its portable brother. But at least we got some better games on the board now, so that's a good sign. But I don't think it's going to last for very long. Oh lord, it's Space Cadet Adventures for the Game Boy. This is one that I actually have some nostalgia for, since I remember my cousin coming over on summer break back in the day and somehow having this game. I don't really remember where he got it from, but I'm gonna guess it was probably from a clearance bin somewhere, because we didn't get new games back then. But it was one of those summers where it was just too damn hot to play outside and nothing else was really going on. So I sat my ass down with this thing, and over the course of a day managed to play through this entire wretched game. And it really is wretched. Even for as basic a Game Boy game as this is, it's a terrible time. What you're doing is basically playing through the Ren and Stimpy Space Madness episode. And I will say that the best thing that this game does are like the little cutscenes that are surprisingly good for a Game Boy game. They really feel like they're straight out of that episode. But in between those, you're treated to the floatiest yet somehow stiffest platformer that you could ever imagine. Your jump feels like you're in space, which, I guess that makes sense, but it's so slow and floaty. Like, it feels like you're in slow motion every time you jump in this game, and you jump all the damn time in this thing. And then just figuring out what you can even jump on and what you're supposed to avoid is very trial and error. A lot of the stuff that looks like it was supposed to be background clutter can either be a platform or just something that can actually hurt you. For instance, you just have to know that you can't step on these buttons when they're flashing. Like, why would they even hurt you? And every stage in this game is just long sections of this that goes on forever. It's a bunch of cheap hits from random crap, along with platforming that's been sent from Satan himself. But really, once you kind of figure out what can and can't hurt you, along with what you can and can't stand on, the only real challenge is just getting past the tedium of doing it. And that's a whole other challenge in itself. So far, this is easily the worst on the list. I can't imagine anyone sticking with this for more than a few minutes, and I'm honestly not sure how I managed to do it as a kid. But I guess that's the power of boredom when there's not much else to do, especially back in the 90s. Space Cadets is what you find at the bottom of the barrel, as far as Ren and Stimpy games go anyway. So we're just gonna put this one down here and never play it again. Ren and Stimpy Time Warp is one that we've actually covered way back in the Nickelodeon Games video, and I honestly thought this one at least had a solid premise since it's a Ren and Stimpy beat-em-up, and for whatever reason, no other Ren and Stimpy game attempted this. Unfortunately, it's not a very good beat-em-up. Your character just doesn't feel good moving around or attacking, and there's some big issues with how the game handles depth. You'll be hit by stuff that isn't anywhere around you half the time, and the platforming is nearly unplayable. And it definitely doesn't help that every single time you get hit, Ren does one of the most annoying screams that they could have possibly chosen for him to do. This is one of those games that I guarantee you'll be reaching for the volume within like the first 2 minutes of playing it. The first couple of stages are even gated by a ridiculous collection requirement, and the game never even tells you how many things you need to collect. So you can make it all the way to the end of stage 2, only to find out that you didn't grab enough gritty kitty UPCs, and that's an instant game over. The game treats it like it's some kind of big joke, but the only person laughing is anyone watching you try to play this game. Actually, the developers seem to treat this whole game like it's a big joke. Even the password screen is almost impossible to figure out. It's just so weirdly awful. At least it does look really good. It's probably the best looking one out of this whole bunch. The characters and stages all look exactly what you'd expect a Ren and Stimpy game to look like, but it's such a chore to play. Like, this thing feels broken at times. So I'm gonna probably get yelled at for this, but I'm gonna put Time Warp in the so bad that it makes me physically ill category, if not just for the constant Ren screaming. Next up, we've got Veediots for the Super Nintendo, and this is one that a lot of people seem to remember playing the most, and overall it's not too bad. I think this one does the whole levels as Ren and Stimpy episodes the best out of all of them. Each level starts off with the actual title card from the show, and then it's basically you running through scenes from that episode. And it's actually done pretty well. Like the first level has Ren planting himself as a mouse inside of a house to drum up sales for their rodent catching business. So you have to avoid Stimpy, who's suddenly taken the job way too seriously and is trying to eat Ren, and eventually does. So then you spend the rest of the level running through Stimpy's decrepit mouth, avoiding his nerve endings or he'll chomp down on top of you. It's not great and there's a lot of cheap hits, but it's actually kind of charming if you're a fan of the show. There's a ton of cameos and little one-off things everywhere, making it almost as much fun just to see all this Ren and Stimpy stuff as it is to play it. And believe it or not, it actually feels decent to play. The controls are totally fine and it actually feels responsive for once, which has been a rare thing in these games. Like I said, there's a ton of cheap hits everywhere, but Ren has enough health to make it manageable for the most part. But I guess this sudden burst of quality came at a price, because this is a super short game with only like 4 levels. You can totally beat this game in like half an hour if you get good enough at it. So I think this one's gonna go into the pretty okay category. I think this would have actually made for a solid rental back in the day if you were a Ren and Stimpy fan. And I gotta say that the Game Boy version ain't that bad either. Yeah, it looks and feels jankier than the Super Nintendo game, but it's totally playable. The worst thing that I can say about this one is that it's even shorter than the SNES version, with only 3 stages here. And the Stimpy's Invention levels takes up like 3/4 of the entire game. And when I say entire game, I mean like 15 minutes max. But I'd rather play this over Space Cadets any day. So the Game Boy version is gonna sit beside its bigger brother in the pretty okay category. It's a lesser experience, but again, I'd totally be happy playing this over and over on car trips to Kmart back in the day. And finally, we've got Stimpy's Invention for the Sega Genesis. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, then you probably already know how I feel about this one. If I had to pick one Ren and Stimpy game for someone to play these days, it'd be this one. And maybe that has something to do with this being a Sega-developed game and not another cheap THQ cash-in. But this one actually feels like a playable video game that someone could enjoy without too much effort. I know, I can't believe it either. And right off the bat, this one nails the Ren and Stimpy look for a video game. It may not be the most tune-accurate look, but it's well drawn, and Ren and Stimpy both look great. They also control pretty well too, and what you can probably tell is a side-scrolling platformer. And to be honest, even if it was just an okay platformer, I'd totally be fine with that, because there ain't too many Ren and Stimpy games that even got that much right. But Stimpy's Invention goes the extra mile and introduces full-on co-op play into the game. And I don't even mean having a friend play it with you, which you can and should do, but I mean just playing by yourself. You've always got Ren or Stimpy next to you, and they need each other to pull off cooperative moves like longer jumps and drilling through the ground. They'll even grab each other for basic attacks like squeezing Stimpy to shoot hairballs. This alone adds so much character to the game because it actually feels like it's a Ren and Stimpy game. They have to work together to get past obstacles, just like the cartoon, and it's wild that Sega's the only one that ever figured this out. The game even occasionally mixes things up with stuff like this area where you're using farts to float your way through a bird aviary. Is it kind of annoying to control and listen to thanks to this horrible sound effect that you hear every single time you press the button? Yeah, it is, but is it still fun to just bounce around with a friend for a few minutes and laugh at it all? Absolutely. Obviously, the game isn't the best thing you're ever gonna play. It's got its problems, like how the controls feel kinda not great at times, and if you're playing by yourself, then it can sorta be annoying to get your AI-controlled partner just to stand where you need them to be, or just prevent them from plummeting off the edge of a platform. But I mean, come on, it's a Ren and Stimpy game that's actually fun, and it's even better if you got someone else to play it with. So I think we all know where this one's gonna go. No doubt the best Ren and Stimpy experience that you can have on consoles. And guess what? That's it. There are no more Ren and Stimpy games, unless you just want to count like browser games or crossovers, but I'm not because I've played enough Ren and Stimpy games today to last a very long time. So let's just get this thing out of here for now. Obviously, this is just my opinion. It's not like some sort of scientific reasoning behind this, so let me know how you'd rank them. And of course, feel free to let me know how totally wrong I am about all of it. Oh, and be sure to give this video a like if you happen to have some fun remembering some of these classic and not so classic Ren and Stimpy games. And maybe even a sub if you want to see some more rankings like this in the future. But that's gonna do it for me this week, kids. I'll be back next week with our more standard video format, so don't worry, we're not doing this all the time now. I just hope you like watching something a little bit different this week. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.